Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
WTF What's the Focus podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll even distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started.
What's the focus? Pop culture, movies, and TV news. What's the focus? What's the focus?
You're awful!
The preceding joke was brought to you by Men. We don't know what we did.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is WTF What's the Focus podcast, episode 6. I'd like to welcome back Matt Kerrigan, co-host. Hi, Matt.
Thank you. It'd be good to hear. Episode 6. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge triumph. And then a personal friend of mine, Mr. Dan Henricksen. Hello.
It's nice to be with you. WTF? I didn't know. I thought that was what the face.
That's the clean version, right? Now we do have the explicit content, signage on here, so we're allowed to curse if need be, but we don't have to get filthy, guys.
Hey, earmuffs, everybody, earmuffs.
Yeah, earmuffs.
That was a little Arrested Development humor for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll take that whenever I
can.
That in
every once in a while.
That's right. It's. I'll sprinkle that in and take a banger in the mouth.
Perfect. This is exactly why you're on the show. So just for anybody tuning in, our last podcast that we did a pretty full-on hour review, which I feel like an hour is still pretty short considering the movie's 3 hours of Avengers Endgame.
A beautiful picture.
Yeah, I think we did paint a beautiful picture. We've been known as the Da Vinci of our generation. So today we're just actually going to be kind of going into Endgame again. We're going to go going over likes and dislikes of the movie, things that we thought could have gone in a different direction, and we're just going to kind of have a little bit of fun to just talk about the movie itself. So kind of diving right into the beginning of the movie where we see the cast actually go out and go straight to Thanos. How'd you guys feel about that opening sequence?
It was a little bewildering.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I hadn't quite got into the. I didn't realize that. I heard rumors about time travel and that kind of stuff, in people talking about it before the movie was out. But I've learned to disregard most of the things that people say pre-movie, unless they're somehow actually involved.
Yep, sure.
And so when they went straight to killing Thanos, I was a little surprised.
I mean, within the first 15 minutes of the movie, they kill him off, which is.
Well, it was a quick scene. It wasn't really a drawn out thing whatsoever. Yeah, first 15 minutes, his head is lopped off.
Now, did you guys like that, or would you have rather them gone a different route from the get go? I mean, do you think that started the story off strong and kind of like made you feel a little like, okay, where's this going?
I like the fact that he had already destroyed the stones. Like he had done the business he had been there to do, and they had no other options. I don't mind that as a story point.
Yeah, reduced to atoms is what he said.
Yeah, the only problem I had with that though is listening later to the movie when Hulk is talking to the Ancient One, and she explains about how the timeline, like time travels through through the Infinity Stones, and that and I'm not talking about when just removing one causes a split in the timeline. I'm saying that when she talks about how time literally is like
Like the stones necessary for time itself.
Exactly. And so the fact that he destroyed the time zones seemed like that would have destroyed time itself.
Right, like what happens when you destroy the reality, the soul stone.
Exactly.
Everybody turns to redheads just everywhere.
That's the worst reality you can live in.
That's the world I want to live in.
Redheads, sorry, not.
Yeah, so if he had said something like, I hid the time stones in time, used the time stones to scatter them through time and space, or something like that, and they taken everybody. I just thought, like I said, that was one inconsistency that I didn't notice the first time I watched the film. I didn't notice it until we got to the second time and the Ancient One was talking and explaining how the time stones work to the Hulk.
Let me get this out of the way personally. I've only seen it once. I know you guys have seen it multiple times, so please correct me in anything that I say.
I'm not big on correcting people. I might just gently, tell you something a little.
Massage them back.
Yeah, exactly. I am a gentleman, Matt.
I know you are, and a scholar.
I wish a little more of the scholar part. Yeah, so for me, I liked the beginning sequence of the movie. I thought that was an interesting way to kind of go about it and kind of get the movie just immediately following Infinity. I mean, we knew that was going to take place soon after Infinity War. I didn't know it was going to be literally just like days. So that part was cool, just because of the story. If you watched it like a lot of people did, like right before you went to the theater, it was literally just like boom, boom. So that part I liked. But it also threw a wrench in the story for me too, because like everybody else, I had a lot of different theories about time loops, who was going to be the one to, go after Thanos. And in the beginning, I thought Captain Marvel was going to be the one who just kind of went in there solo. And just took it upon herself because she didn't seem too much like a team player. She was kind of more like, I'm a shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely in his weakened state, she totally could have. But no, I liked that. Is there anything that you guys can think of at the top of your head? And I know I just mentioned Captain Marvel, and Dan, we spoke yesterday. And we could talk a little bit just about her power and her kind of story arc and things that you like and maybe things that you don't like.
I love that she's a strong female character. I think that she was strong in the comics and they made her just as strong here. I felt like as a test fighter pilot, that she would have been maybe a little more self-confident. And I get that had something to do with the amnesia in the first movie, but you can amnesia memories, but you can't amnesia personality.
Yeah, I like that.
And so I don't like that it somehow managed to strip her of any self-confidence whatsoever and be like, hey, guess what? Nobody else has superpowers, just you. And we gave them to you, by the way. She said, why didn't you give them to anybody else? Oh, no, don't worry. We gave them to you.
No, they're probably telling her, hey, you're the chosen one.
Right.
We give
don't touch that thing in your neck. You don't need to know anything about that. Just know we gave them to you.
And they could be easily taken away.
Right. Which is, obviously ended up being baloney. And she figured out later, but it just felt like she would have been.
Why was she infused with the Kree blood? If she knew she was human, because they say it later as her like code of memory that she knew who gave her the Kree blood.
So they did that just to actually, during the brainwashing sequence, that was just more of a solidifying, look at, you're one of us and not a human. It didn't have really anything more to do than, hey, these memories that you're remembering.
During the
that's where they diverged from the comics.
Lost enough blood to needed an infusion in general. This wasn't I don't know. So I just had missed that part as well.
Right, and in the comics, she was her blood was fused with Marvel's.
Yeah.
That's why she became Captain Marvel, and so that was definitely kind of a plot twist for me in the Captain Marvel movie, that those guys, the Kree, were actually the bad guys, and Skrull were the good guys.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I think that
manipulative and evil, and just power hungry.
Yeah, I think that surprised everybody. I think going in, everybody who saw the previews, they just portrayed him as the bad guy because you really just saw the scenes where from her memory where they make her think that they're after her.
Right.
But
Well,
you got to imagine
anybody who's ever
too.
read the comics too was pretty surprised. I think like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they're like for just like anybody else though, just like humans. I mean, they set up the scrolls are good and for the time being, but the scroll war is coming, and for every good, there's going to be bad. So you're going to see it play more just like anybody else, where you have your good characters and bad characters from the same exact race, and that's going to be coming up in the next probably Captain Marvel movie. You can only imagine that that's going to be kind of the direction it goes.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting divergence from her origin story that they changed where her power came from, and kind of went in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it'd be like if you did the Superman story and being like, oh well, Superman didn't really come from Krypton. He was hit by a piece of it when he was young, and that's what turned him into Superman. Like it was just a weird departure.
Yeah. So Captain Marvel, like we said, was in pretty much the first 15 minutes. She's the one who went up into space and got Tony and Nebula from the Benatar and brought them back down to Earth. And then after that 15 minutes and after they go after Thanos, and then you see the holograms kind of scene of all of them, telling and stating to Romanoff where they are. You don't see her for the whole entire movie. How did you guys feel about that?
Also, just a great tracker. She found them in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you don't really get the point that, like, if Rocket had said anything to her, did she? Did they?
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
She's just Indian of the skies.
yeah. I guess we could say Native American of the skies. I don't know, Matt.
She followed their Stardust tracks.
Yeah, something. They headed this way, due east. This is space. What?
Yeah, I actually thought the same thing too, because especially since Tony Stark makes reference to the fact that they're in like the absolute empty abyss of space near no shipping lanes or anything like that. Like they're in the middle of nowhere, and then hey, check it out, Captain Marvel found them.
Yeah, hey, look, I found a ship. No, so that part for me, as soon as they actually had the hologram scene where you heard her say, hey, you're not going to see me around for a while, I knew we weren't going to see her until the third act of the movie. That for me was obvious. So I don't know if I really liked that. I kind of would like to see her more involved, but I can also see, because she is so powerful, that they didn't want to bring her in and make this kind of just like an easy task.
Well, it's also such a new character for Marvel. They don't want to oversaturate her character right after she just had a standalone movie. I can see that just as Marvel themselves as a company.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's going to be a lot to come, because now she's going to be obviously the future going into the next generation of Marvel. So I could totally see that. And now kind of just closing this character out, kind of her story through beginning to end. Dan, when we were speaking yesterday about her entering into the atmosphere and actually coming to help out at the very end of the movie, one of your biggest complaints was how effortless that she can actually just drill through any ship, just like I said, like a hot knife through butter. But when it comes to hand-to-hand combat with Thanos, it seemed to be somewhat of a draw.
Yeah, and one of the things that really stands out to me when you have characters that are so incredibly strong, and they make a point out of showing how strong they're, because that's not the first time that Captain Marvel has just peeled through ships, quickly and seemingly effortlessly. She did it with the at the end of the movie with what's his name? I can't think of his name. Yes,
Ronan.
Yes, with the Ronan and his fleet, just melted the whole fleet.
Yeah, with a smile on her face.
Right, and then she gets to Thanos' ship. Thing, and obviously she's such a threat that they in fact stopped firing on the entire war going below them and focused solely on her. So clearly they've identified her as a major threat. She comes in, melts the ship, something that Thanos arguably I don't believe could ever have done. They've never shown him punching through the holes of any ship. Like he could barely handle Iron Man's armor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Iron Man couldn't melt through ships. And then when she comes down to hand combat, you would think that she would have just melted through him, or just beat the sweet tar out of him in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, and that's the only way I can actually process that, is just to think that she's such a psychopath that she really didn't go full strength on him to a point. Like, she wanted to like whoop his ass and wanted to take her time. She's kind of a psychopath like that. She knows she's powerful, and she really wanted to just beat the living tar out of him. And that's the only way I can actually process that, because you're absolutely right. I mean, she's so powerful. She technically should just be able to just one quick swoop and he's gone. I mean,
right. Well, or it's something that I've found repeated often in movies where you have a superhero, they are supremely powerful, but then when it comes to smaller moments, they kind of nerf them temporarily, and then go back to them being so like they do that to make them either bring the villain up or turn the hero down. One of the two. They don't just like go back and forth so that you can show they're super cool, but then have a cool fight later.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that she's going to have an Achilles heel at some point, right? I mean, she can't be... I mean, I don't know if that's going to be more like... It's not a physical Achilles heel. Maybe like somebody, kidnaps people she loves or cares about, and then that, makes her not fight certain people or whatever the case may be. But there's got to be some weakness to her, because if there's no weakness and they can't like play on that, then the story's going to dry out real quick, at least for me.
Right. Fair.
I mean, even Superman's got one, so let's see what hers is, and let's like kind of play around with that and get that story going.
Yeah, if her next movie is just flying through the universe, busting chops all over the place, that's gonna be a pretty boring movie. You're right.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Right.
Well,
and then they're gonna have to.
She needs a General Zod.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't know if they're gonna play it like Superman, where they come up with or I mean, how close they can follow the comics, because, like I said, they've already departed in her very origin story. So at this point, what villains are she going to run into that can actually match her based on her origin? I mean, she's made from an Infinity Stone this time around, not just mixing with Kree blood like she did in the comics.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell too. I mean, you see any characters that were created by any kind of Infinity Stones. Are very Scarlet Witch and her are definitely the two most powerful.
And she too was in the process of taking Thanos apart, until he rained fire.
Yeah.
I mean, literally taking him apart, and then all of a sudden, rained fire. I don't know. I didn't understand. That was the one scene I kind of laughed. I'm like, why didn't she just use him as an umbrella? She already had him elevated.
No, I want mystical umbrellas instead, Dan. I want the mystical golden umbrellas. That's what I want.
Yeah, magic umbrellas. And again, the same thing with that. I kept wondering, like, why don't they just do that same trick they already did in Infinity Wars, which you open up a portal on one side, then somebody else opens up a second portal and redirects that right at the ship, which is exactly what they did in Avengers, in Infinity War. Like, and that's the other thing I have issue with is when they show a trick like using the sling rings to cut people in half. Like, why didn't you just do that when you were fighting Thanos in the first place? Just cut him in half.
Yeah, I mean that.
Who's the field general there?
Oh yeah. Who's the field general for Game of Thrones? That's a whole different podcast.
I can't even go into that. Actually, that's too much for me right now. That's too much.
Take a bite to your dog. Anyhow, go on.
yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So Captain Marvel, great character. Not in a lot of the movie.
But definitely a character that, I mean, it really depends on how they want to run with her. Yeah, she's the face of the franchise to come. She's the face of Phase 5. Is that what it is? So yeah, I'm interested in what Marvel does with that character. So I will continue to watch, obviously, but
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it should be interesting. So is there one character that you guys liked the most in this movie? I mean, obviously we're going to see, and what we talked about in our last podcast is a lot of these characters that were in this movie didn't have a lot of screen time in Infinity War. So obviously we saw a ton of Iron Man, ton of Captain America. As a matter of fact, I was actually looking at screen times of the actors that were actually on screen, and it was pretty impressive with how much Robert Downey and Chris Evans were on screen, man. They were almost the entire movie. When it came in comparison to some of the other guys. But Was there any character that kind of stood out to you guys that you were excited to see? You liked what they did? I mean, for me personally, and obviously he's one of the biggest characters, and the only reason they won is I loved Ant-Man. Scott Lang is one of my favorite characters.
Literally the biggest character. Yeah.
Yeah. When he haymakers that thing at the very end during the war, when he turns huge, I loved it.
Yeah, me too. That was a highlight for me. I thought that was fantastic. Or when he stepped on, gosh, I can't think of his name, the guy with the chain.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a great character, but he's not just a great action character. He brings so much comedy to the actual the movie as well, but it's not too slapstick comedy to where it becomes ridiculous. It just fits in so perfectly.
Well, he does it so effortlessly. You know, Paul Rudd is just such a fantastic comedically timed. There we go. Actor.
Damn charming, yeah.
Yeah,
and he doesn't age. What the
so
hell?
Smoothly from him. I know. Seriously.
Yeah, him and John Stamos and who else? Rob Lowe. Those fucking guys. It just shows you when you make millions of dollars, you just don't age.
You just, it's weird how them and Jennifer Lopez.
Just them and Jennifer Lopez, that's it.
When you have enough severed baby foreskins to rub on your body like J-Lo does, and you can stay young forever. It's the elixir of life.
Oh, man.
No, but honestly, I really, down. Yes, let me take that. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance was fantastic. I mean, he just, he really gives such a depth and an appropriate amount of swagger to the character that, you would believe that he is a billionaire philanthropist genius.
And I think he kind of is in real life, so that kind of works out. I mean, I think he's married and everything in real life, but he's definitely a billionaire in real life, so, I mean.
Well, and to play off his character, the other one that I'm glad she has never left the MCU is Pepper Potts. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow surviving through most of his movies, and being a consistent, and then basically talking him into even participating in what he did. As a character, she was vitally important, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, she knew him better than anybody, so she knew what was kind of deep down in his heart of what he wanted to do. She just had to kind of say it out loud, right?
And that was a fantastic team up at the end. I think maybe that was one of my, I don't know about my favorite moments, but I really enjoyed that moment.
Yeah, to get her in her rescue gear, and to see her finally in that. I mean, she teased a picture of it on Instagram a long time ago, and you saw the blue armor, and you kind of thought that was coming. But, yeah, it was a great team up at the end. There was a couple of just visual effects of just her and Iron Man in the air, kind of back-to-back firing on people. That was just amazing.
Yeah, that was a cool moment for sure for me. I think my favorite moment was Spider-Man's return.
Oh yeah, that was great. The relationship between him and Tony Stark was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, and the fact that he was just he portrays that young innocent kid so well. He's completely close as to what happens. He thinks he's just passed out for a couple of minutes. He has no concept at this point that it's been 5 entire years.
Yeah, right. You were gone. That's weird.
Yeah, imagine after the battle, he's gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
Well, people from his high school would have graduated and are in college. So.
But as we know from the trailer of his next movie, not to dive into that too early, but even at the end of this movie, at least all of his friends seem to be dusted as well. Luckily for him, right?
Luckily for him, every single one of the people he cares about, including his aunt, seems to have been dusted.
Yeah. Right. So, what did you think, Dan, about Fat Thor?
Oh, okay. I mean, so excited. There are a few moments when I have just kind of blurted out in a theater, kind of that,
yeah.
Visceral, of course, gut reaction.
Yeah, and when Matt and I were in the theaters, I mean, we definitely got that reaction from the audience. I mean, people were pretty excited to see it. But Matt, I'm sorry, I should call him Lebowski Thor, right?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I apologize. Lebowski Thor, which he very much looked like Lebowski. I loved the glasses. I loved the robe.
Maintained throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like he got magicked into being skinny. Thor.
No, I mean, I'm betting you get like a training montage of the Asgardians of the Galaxy of him just like getting back in shape or not.
Which would be hilarious. That'd be a great scene to see Chris Pratt and him work out together and
trying to
him not be able to
compete.
do half of what Thor's been able to do.
Right, yeah, totally. That's a good scene, you're right.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I would love to see that. No, but his character is one of the more interesting ones too. I mean, look at everything he's gone through and all the loss that he had and the failure that he felt in the beginning of the movie. And then, you know, really he didn't turn it around until after he went back to Asgard and spoke to his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of when he snapped out of his little his own mind and kind of, you know, got back to his normal self and became, you know, the hero, which was cool to see. I mean, it was inevitable.
They played that up. Like it's like they played that he only felt bad about not killing Thor, but he had
Thanos. Oh, you mean Thanos?
I'm sorry, Thor killing Thanos. I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had an entire string of failures. You know, first he blew it at home. You know, lost his home, lost everything there. Like, yeah, he saved some people, not everybody.
Yeah, he lost his brother. He lost his best friend.
Right, and then blew it against Thanos on the ship, and then blew it against Thanos at the end of Infinity. I mean, like, he just has had this string of absolutely devastatingly consequence, like, you know, galaxy-wide consequence failures.
Yeah, more so than anybody, really.
And they really were in a row too. I mean, think about it, like his homeworld was destroyed, immediately followed by his people. What was left of his ragtag band was half killed. I guess we're left to assume that half of them survived and half did not.
Yeah, half of them survived before the snap. So then those half that survived cut that in half again.
Yeah, just wrecked them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why he was excited when the hammer flew to him, and he says, "I am still worthy." So I think that the speech with his mom, having the hammer come to him, gave him a bit of confidence. But yes, he was pretty much a failure throughout that most of the MCU.
Yeah. And speaking of the hammer, talk about the one scene that gave me legit goosebumps is when the hammer went to Cap. Man, that was something I've been waiting to see for a very long time. That was
and you could
sweet.
tell where every single true comic nerd in the theater was sitting because they went, "Whoa, yeah!"
Absolutely, man. Everybody was so pumped and jacked up to see that. I mean, if anybody was going to be worthy enough to wield that hammer, it was going to be him. And from Age of Ultron, when he scoots that thing on the table, and then Chris Hemsworth in Endgame says, "I knew it," when he catches it. I mean, that was also one of my just favorite scenes. The action sequence was awesome. Seeing him control lightning was out of control. I mean, I didn't think he could do that, but apparently once you wield the hammer, you can just access it like that, which is amazing. Yeah, so the next big thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, guys, is kind of more having to do with time, and kind of running through who we know is now out of their timeline and now into ours. So, and feel free just to kind of interject. So we know right off the bat, in order, I think, would be Loki now has the Space Stone from 2012 and disappears. Correct?
But he disappears in his own timeline. So that's, I think, an important caveat. Because I was reading an article by the writers of the movie, and they were explaining their version of time travel that essentially, and they kind of delve into a little bit in the movie. They say, you know, you can't go into the past because once you go to the past, that past, your present is now your past, and the past is your future. You know, it's just kind of this big weird like jumble around. So because they're trying to explain why can't we just go back in the past and kill baby Thanos? You know,
I love that part too.
Yeah, which was awesome. And they name it listing off movies where they did that. You know, like Time Cop, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Time Cop. Yeah, that's hilarious.
You know, just all that stuff. And so the way the writers explain it is when it's impossible to go to the past. So when in this movie, when they went into the past, they basically went into another time stream, a parallel time stream.
Which makes sense because they see themselves, so they know it's a parallel.
And so it was, they explained it like if you could take the characters out of one movie theater, like literally pull them off the screen and implant them into an adjacent movie theater where maybe they started the movie of 45 minutes later and slip them into that movie. That's how it worked. So both movies are playing, and you can't, one movie can't affect the other movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they're able to go back in time. And I think it's important to say that, because now Loki getting the space stone and disappearing, he does that in his own time stream.
Sure, and that's setting up the Disney Plus series that's coming out, where it's going to be Loki, and what's thought to be is him going through his own time, but going into different areas within that time and changing history. So,
Loki.
But wouldn't he need the time stone for that?
See, and that's kind of why I'm.
Or I guess Pym particles, I suppose.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see how it plays. I mean, he's the god of mischief, so that's what the show's going to be about, is him going kind of into history and messing with things and meddling for his own benefit, obviously.
Right, but okay. So again, another question, based on what they've already told us in this movie, that you can't mess with your own history, right? Like, you can't go kill baby Thanos in your own timeline. So that makes it curious to see if Loki goes around and starts meddling in his timeline. Like, why can he do it in his, but nobody else could?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, well, shoot, man, I can't wait to actually see all these shows that are going to come out on Disney Plus. The fact that we're getting all the actual original actors who are doing movies now or doing TV shows is pretty.
Paid.
Oh yeah, they are.
That money. Yeah.
Well, come on, it's Disney, guys. They own everything.
Hulu
they have a couple of dollars, I've heard.
Hulu has live sports. Shut up.
Didn't Disney attempt to buy out of the U.S. Treasury so they could just print their own money?
It's just Mickey's face.
Because that's basically what they're doing already right now.
Oh man, that would be worse than a euro. What is this, Monopoly money? This is pure European tender. Sorry, I had to throw a Beer Fest quote in there.
So I'm curious how that plays out. I'm really interested to see the new dynamic, with Gamora being from another timeline where she is, in fact, not in love with Star-Lord.
Matter of fact, they didn't have any of the Guardians of the Galaxy anything with her. I mean, this is well before she knew any of them. So
any of them, yeah. So no attachment to Groot, anybody, obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, are they going to spend the movie chasing her around the galaxy and then to confront some? Here's how I see it. Here's how I would write it. They chase her around the galaxy, confront some other big giant evil again, and that somehow sucks her into being with them by the end of the movie.
Yeah, well, we're going to see Adam, right? I mean, that was what they said. That's could be the big bad.
I thought they were going to put him in this movie. Honestly,
no way, man. I wish they did to a point, but
that's how they resolved. Right, but that's how they resolved the Infinity Wars in the comics. Is with the help of Adam.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a couple of different things in the comics that they could have done in the movie too. More with Gamora. I mean, at one point in the comics, she gets the gauntlet herself. Yeah. Yeah. So, so
does Nebula too. Nebula gets the.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's what I meant. I meant to say Nebula.
Yeah,
that's what
Nebula gets the gauntlet. Yeah.
Yes, correct. That's what I was meaning to say. Is she gets the gauntlet and she goes ahead and she wrecks shop herself. So I mean, she's not a great character in the comic books either.
Right.
Yeah. So Gamora is now into our present day timeline. So kind of, you were saying your guess is just kind of going back and forth around the galaxy, kind of just trying to find her and kind of missions in between.
How did she get off the Earth? How did she get off the planet? Do they show that?
I don't know if she's necessarily off yet. She just disappeared from the scene.
Right. I'm assuming that she stole, I'm going to make the assumption that a ship survived from Captain Marvel's damage to Thanos's, ship. So maybe one of the smaller ships. Yeah, dinghy.
Thanos' dinghy. Might as well have been a dinghy.
No. So, I mean, who knows? But I'm also curious to see how Thor plays into the next one. He's obviously on their ship. Is he going to be around for the next movie? Or
I think
he himself said he had no destination. He has no idea where he's going, but he's got a ride.
Right. So does he just use them as a ride, or is he actually in it to be part of the Guardians for a movie?
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I'm totally down for that. And I think that we learned a lot from Thor Ragnarok, right? And seeing the Hulk and the Thor team up. And that went over so incredibly well that once they even saw their banter back and forth in Infinity War between Thor and the Guardians, I felt like it was just a no-brainer.
Can we talk about how disappointing Hulk was in this movie?
Yeah, you know, the more I saw it, the more I have to agree with you. I do like his character as a whole, but there was so much that they just missed out on, and they made him
do
just
anything Hulk. He did a lot of Professor, but not a lot of Hulk.
true.
Outside of snapping, and being. I mean, granted, he was injured after that too, but yeah,
But he's still the Hulk.
You guys, he threw a motorcycle in 2012. Okay, he smashed the top of a 4-door sedan.
I mean, one, they made him really small.
Yeah,
Right? Like, they shrunk him.
Yeah. I mean, they
I
kind
guess
of.
that's a component of Professor Hulk.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's a couple of things with the Hulk that they kind of retconned from the beginning. I mean, he's technically supposed to get more and more angry and actually grow in size when he's actually being threatened or fired upon. And that hasn't happened ever since Mark Ruffalo took over as the Hulk. I mean, that's never been the case. He's always stayed the same size. Which is really disappointing.
Now, when they shrunk him in this movie. Yeah,
he's definitely smaller. But, you know, I got to say, I felt like Captain America was even smaller in this movie, too.
Really?
I feel like he was a little thinner towards the end, even in comparison to the first scene when they went after Thanos. I mean, I felt like he was a little smaller in comparison to Infinity War.
I did. I mean, we all noticed he had America's ass.
You know what? That is America's ass.
That's a great line.
I'm glad
fantastic.
Yeah.
They did do a great job with the comedy throughout this whole entire thing. I mean, me and Ryan, you talked about how you could see this being a downer for a good majority of it, but the comedy was gold pretty much throughout from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you have to do that, right? You got to find that healthy medium where you can actually get people enthralled in the story, make it emotional, but also throw a little comedy in there. And they obviously have the right characters to just do that.
Well, and clearly they've figured out the balance where Warner Brothers has not.
Right.
You know, I mean, I just saw Aquaman, and talk about such an abortion of a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
you know, the visual effects, I will say, is the best part of that movie, because some of it is pretty nice when you see it on Blu-ray. But the story and just all around acting
the first 5 minutes ruined it. Like when he's taking out that submarine and he does that look, and you hear the guitar go, wow, wow. Like, wait, is this a Western?
Very detailed.
Is this Seinfeld?
Yeah.
As he lifts up the submarine.
But they did that little guitar thing 3 times in the opening sequence of the movie, where he mugs the camera, raises an eyebrow like The Rock, and he goes, "Meow." I wanted to shut it off right there. I'm like, no, I rented this. I paid a whole $1 to Redbox. I'm gonna watch it.
It's a great investment.
I want my $1 back.
Yeah, that's a 99-cent phone call. Is that a thing anymore? No.
I'll use $1 to wipe my butt with, but I want it back from renting Aquaman.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful statement.
Yep.
I'll have to agree with you, though.
Back to Endgame.
Back to Endgame.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just such a good juxtaposition of, you know, you've got, Aquaman, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, arguably some of the biggest and most well-known comic book characters, at least in the United States, if probably not the globe.
Yeah,
so
and now Shazam too. But
and you have a guaranteed moneymakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Justice League, whatever, and then you have Disney on the other hand, who takes characters that, while they're known about, like probably Captain America, all of those is probably the most well-known character. You know, I wouldn't call Iron Man obscure, but he wasn't essential. You know, X-Men.
Oh, dude, no, you make a great point. If I can interject, in 2008, when Iron Man was actually released, Iron Man was not somebody that a lot of people knew about. I mean, they knew about him a little bit.
They knew of him a little bit.
But they didn't know him as the character that we now know by any means. And that's how good Robert Downey is. I mean, he brought that character literally to life for people.
And even Hulk, which again was probably Disney's Marvel character that was best known, stumbled the first few movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had that last one before Mark Ruffalo was Edward Norton, and I actually didn't
before him. Yeah, Eric Bana.
Yeah, I didn't mind the Edward Norton one. I actually kind of enjoyed him as the Hulk, to be honest. He kind of portrayed it a little more realistic to the point of what we were talking about earlier. I think in that movie, he did get bigger when he got shot upon by the military.
Right? That's technically like the first Marvel movie? First
he is in the timeline. Like if you look at the timeline, chronological timelines, that movie is there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the first Marvel movie. I'd say Men in Black was the first Marvel movie. Did you know that was a Marvel movie, Dan?
I don't know that I did, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, the old Marvel logo for them for Men in Black was that it almost looked very Venom-esque within the writing, and it was very like thin white writing with a black backdrop, and it said Marvel. But nothing where we see the big red background with big white letters now. But
and it wasn't part of the MC universe. I think that Hulk is, though. That was one of the first MCU tied together series, but they didn't have the cool little end credits, scenes to the next movie, and I think that's why it doesn't get the credit. But
Ryan, you also forget about Howard the Duck movie.
Okay, did you guys see in Endgame that Howard the Duck was in the end scene?
Yeah, when he was part of the collector's collection.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about in Endgame.
Yeah.
He was
there.
He was actually in the last battle scene in Endgame, and if you see it, it's when you see the Wasp actually enter into the picture, and in the background, if you look over her left shoulder, but you're right looking at her, you will see him holding a big gun, and he is in that scene.
What? That is bizarre. That's hilarious. How is that possible? Because he was part of the collector's collection, wasn't he?
Yeah, at one point, but then we also saw him again in Guardians of the Galaxy, I believe, too.
He was at that bar, you're right.
Yeah, he was in that raunchy planet where it was all gambling and prostitutes.
Well, that definitely would be the place where Howard the Duck would be.
Yeah, that's quacktastic. Sorry, corny dad joke. But yeah, that was cool to see him in there, man. I mean, he's getting his own TV show too, but I believe it's in an animated series.
Is that going to be on? It's not going to be on Disney Plus.
No, it's going to be on Disney Plus.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. I don't feel like that could be true Howard the Duck, because like when you
him and that
like a duck sex scene.
Yeah. No, I don't know how they're going to actually go about doing it, but I believe it's going to be on that network. We'll see, but I definitely know he's getting his own show. So
I mean, it's like I don't see there being a Deadpool show on Disney Plus either. Even though that's technically now owned by Disney.
No, I can't see that either.
Yeah,
that'll be in its own category.
Howard the Duck show, huh? That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into it, but I do know he's getting his own series. So in one way or the other, we're going to see that, which will be funny. And then
a good ducktail.
Yeah, woo. And then let's see what else about this movie, guys. What did you like? What was your biggest dislike of the movie, if you had to pick anything? And again, probably nitpicks, but what would you say was your least favorite?
I'd probably still go with the Hulk, not being the Hulk. I would have loved to at least seen a fight scene between Thanos and the Hulk. Again, I know he was injured. I know he had to take the snap on first. But I would have loved to have seen that.
Sure. Yeah. No, and that's
round two where he kind of gets over his Hulk impotence issues.
Right.
Yeah, he just has to take the blue pill and he'd have been fine.
Some Hulkagra.
A lot of other small nitpicks I have are things that I hope that they deal with in future movies. Things that we talked about, like with Captain Marvel, things like, what did Captain America do when he actually went back in time? How do you replace the Soul Stone correctly? Things that I hope they address later. But for this particular movie, I'd probably say, the anti-Hulk is probably my biggest disappointment out of it.
And is that the same for you, Dan?
I don't know my biggest point. My first disappointment, though, was early on in the movie after they killed Thanos, and the movie just kind of stopped dead in its tracks. And they go back to like counseling grief sessions. It's been 5 years since half the population was destroyed.
Yeah,
and
what are
people are still moping around.
Yeah, I mean, but you got to imagine, just playing devil's advocate. I mean, I don't think you ever stop moping, to be honest. It's not like a relative that got old or even sick. I mean,
moping, Ronan.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
he's
moping
and taking it out on people.
II, right? Like at the end of World War II, 60 million people in Europe total died.
Mm-hmm.
When you count like civilian casualties and stuff like that. I mean, just buildings devastated. Like it was a huge problem for Europe. 5 years later, they were not still like walking around going, "Oh man, we really got beat up." That's not human nature.
Like, still definitely 5 years later.
Like human nature, like they're still rebuilding. Like they would have been rebuilding, but humans are resilient. Like we spread like a disease because we're so resilient, right? Like we multiply. We always find a way to cope, and we find coping mechanisms and stuff like that. I feel like 5 years after the fact, like Ant-Man's walking down the street, it's like, "Hey kid, what happened?" The kid just rides off. It's almost like it's like a zombie movie. I was like, "Geez, that kid's a dick. Like, why he didn't say anything?"
What a dick.
Yeah, like it's been 5 years. I still can't talk about it. Too soon, man. Too soon.
Do you know how old I was 5 years ago?
2 years old, yeah, when the snap happened.
Yeah, so totally. But the second thing, the thing that really bothered me, the whole thing, is something that wasn't even in the movie at all. It wasn't ever discussed in the movie. It was, and I talked to you about this last night, is Thanos's concept for reducing strain on the universe by cutting all living things, in half, would actually result in a complete ecological collapse of any given planet. When you take half of all endangered species off the map, like think about taking half of the bee population out of the globe right now.
That'd be great.
Like, the downstream problems with pollination would be catastrophic.
Okay, I would miss avocados, but I hate bees.
Well, and just food in general.
They don't like food either.
You would miss food.
Listen, your firearms are useless against them, Dan. There's no stopping them. They have an aerial advantage.
But not only that, like, you talk about like removing endangered apex predators, and then their prey gets to breed in an unlimited fashion. That has literally, and we've seen evidence in Wyoming, stuff literally changes the course of rivers. So you get an explosion in populations that had been controlled by apex predators. You get all this stuff. It would be, you get a lack of pollination. You get all these endangered species now completely dying off wholesale. It would be an ecological collapse. And then the Avengers plan is like, let's bring everybody back, not when they disappeared, but right now, which is super selfish just so Iron Man can keep his daughter.
Yes.
Would result in a second devastating, I think with those two events combined would probably be close to the end of life on the planet. If you were to take our ability to grow food and seriously damage it by removing most of the bees, and then instantly doubling the population, that is not a good thing.
Again, maybe that'll be referenced in another movie.
So you've got I mean, you already see Spider-Man. Everybody's like, "Yay, happy! Let's go on Europe vacation." I don't think they're going to address that, but you've got a globe that has adjusted to having half the population. So the population is only dialed back, by the way, to 1972. That's when the global population for humans, at least, was half of what it was today. So that's not you're not dialing the clock back very far. Like you're not buying the Earth, another 7 millennia of time. You bought them 40 years. Congrats. But I mean, just could you imagine the strain, like the economic strain that would happen if people, or like let's say like I disappeared and you bought my house, and now all of a sudden I reappeared and I'm like, I want my house back.
I'd be like,
legally.
No, sucker. Sorry, man. Finders keepers.
So you'd
have. Do you reappear where you were snapped? Some people are like flying or out in the ocean and doing other things.
You just see people falling from the sky. This sucks.
I mean, so the Avengers meant well, but in reality, it would have been, I think, far worse than leaving them not returned. Quite honestly.
No, I agree. I'm going to bring up a couple other points that some of the stuff that bugged me and mine and questions actually, and maybe you guys can talk about it a little bit. So, am I having the right understanding that Doctor Strange gave away his time stone to Thanos? Okay. That particular time stone was then destroyed by Thanos. So in this new, like, everybody back reality, he still does not have a time stone. Even if they bring that one back to 2012 or wherever to the ancient one, I still think the events still happen to a point, right? Or will he just have his stone back?
No, I think I hadn't even thought about that. That's a great problem to have, because they promised they would return that stone back to a previous timeline. And as we know, the events of the past, like, you can't change the events of the present by changing the events of past in this Marvel time travel universe.
Exactly. So that's going to open up a whole nother situation for Doctor Strange for his second movie, because technically he shouldn't have now a time stone. That should be done.
Right. But, they're going to be like, no, he got it back.
Now, Dan and Matt, answer me this. Just like they did in Doctor Strange at the very end, Doctor Strange used that time stone to reverse time for Wong, who was literally impaled in the stomach by a pipe, and was able to reverse everything to the point where he's now back to life and standing with Doctor Strange. Why wouldn't they just do that with Tony?
I thought the exact same thing. I was like, and back it up.
Because that won't reverse anything that he just did. It just reverses exactly
just
him. Just like they showed the apple. I mean, in the first Doctor Strange. Yep. I mean, they could have easily just taken the stone and actually went back to Tony and just kind of reversed him to where he was healthy and back alive, right?
Well, maybe that's why they can't, because he doesn't have it.
And same for taking the stones back at the very end of the movie is the other thing that I kind of had a little complaint about. Again, me just more diving into it. How can you not go back in time just like you just did and save Black Widow? How can that not be undone?
Yeah, that's the one stone that doesn't make any sense, just to return it. It's not like Red Skull's going to be like, oh, you're back, cool. I guess I'll go back to just being the guardian of this place.
See, and I had the understanding that...
Maybe returning it's really easy. Maybe you just throw it over the cliff and it goes back.
I'm just going to hope this works, guys.
I'm going to make a wish and just flick it in. Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't work, they can just climb down the cliff and pick it up. It's not like touching the bottom automatically. You have to have a pretty hefty fall to kill you.
Yeah, that's the other complaint that I had. It's just like, well, why don't you go back literally right before she jumps off and just says, hey, by the way, we're good. Let's roll. and not even have to...
not necessary anymore. We're solid.
Yeah, I mean, at that point.
But didn't they already establish, though, that people that were killed by means not associated with the Infinity Stones can't be brought back?
Yeah. And I was under the understanding, though, that Red Skull was released from that planet once somebody obtained the Soul Stone, because his sole purpose, his whole purpose was to be the guide on that planet, to direct people to the stone, to tempt them to see if they would actually make the sacrifice. So
and that's what I thought too.
Yeah, because he serves zero purpose on that planet. Now nobody's going to go there for zero particular reason.
He really didn't serve the purpose of even guarding it. He just knew everybody's parents' name.
Oh, God.
23andMe needs to get a hold of that guy.
Yeah, seriously.
Ancestry.com. Hey, I got a question for you.
I never knew my dad. It was Ivan. Oh, damn.
Damn it.
Okay. What about my grandpa? Sorry, my gift doesn't go that far back. Just
I only go back one generation. That's it.
Very limited gift.
It's
So,
eternal, but
yeah.
also limited.
Yeah, so that was my only nitpicks was kind of what they could and couldn't do with time, because we've seen them actually prove certain things that they were able to do with the time stone.
And that goes back to my earlier point. That's one of the things that drives me nuts about these movies is they'll show these super cool abilities like reversing particular deaths of individuals or cutting people in half with a sling ring or, on and on and on. And then, or melting ships with your sheer awesomeness and then not use them.
Yeah. So you're seeing how powerful people are and they're not using them to their full ability when they technically need it the most.
Right. And Doctor Strange actually seems to be the most problematic of all of the Marvel movies, because I'm thinking about this, and all of the complaints that we've really had have all come from that movie. The sling rings, the time stone, or even in Doctor Strange, they showed like, oh, if you're having a problem with enemies, trap them in the mirror dimension, right? Like they make a point out of that.
Right.
So why didn't they just trap all the bad guys in the mirror dimension when they first came and attacked Wakanda?
Well, he on Titan, right? And
yeah, he was on Titan.
Through that.
Yeah, he used the Power Stone and broke through the mirror dimension, which I didn't know was possible, but apparently is once you actually are wearing that gun.
No, I'm not talking about Thanos. I'm talking about when all those other little whatever those Thanos's cretins were attacking. Why didn't they just mirror dimension those guys?
Well, he wasn't on Wakanda though, so he wasn't able to actually do that throughout the battle. It was just him
but
on
his buddy was Poe.
Wong.
Yeah.
Well, no, Wong was back.
Wong
was back at the Sanctum. He went back to the Sanctum. He wasn't in Wakanda.
Okay, all right.
In Infinity War, yeah.
Well,
there was
then just had him open up a door, walk over, and then mirror dimension.
Yeah, I mean, shit, that would have been very handy in that situation. But, no, they would have just opened more umbrellas. Just cool.
Oh yeah, no, we're not gonna use our other super cool magic umbrella. Like they could at least use magic missile. They could use magic missile.
So Dan, 0 out of 10, 10 being the best, 0 being obviously the least. What'd you think of the movie rating wise?
Yeah, clearly we're nitpicking it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a fun movie. We're comic book nerding it. I do, as a medically oriented person who has a master's in cell molecular biology, and my whole undergrad was about zoology and ecology. I have some serious reservations about the plot line.
Sure.
And what the ramifications of Thanos' action and the Avengers' actions, quite frankly, would have been. But beyond that, I can do a willing suspension of disbelief, and I loved it. I mean, the fun factor was definitely a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to agree, right? It was a little love letter to the fans. It kind of gave everything that people wanted to see with,
multiple callbacks, obviously, with time travel. No, it was fan service for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, there was some stuff that anybody can nitpick, but ultimately, visually, it was gorgeous. The story itself was tons of fun. The characters were obviously into it, and as Matt and I stated, you could tell these characters have worked together for a very long time. They worked really, really well off of each other, which is.
I said in the last podcast, I'm still amazed that they filmed it all at the same time and no leaks were done whatsoever. Nobody came out with spoilers, top to bottom, in that whole entire crew. That was purely impressive on my part.
Yeah,
you heard what they had to do with Tom, right? Like how they managed that with him.
They just leave him out of everything.
They literally did not give him any script. He only had his own lines. And he wasn't acting opposite anybody.
It's because he would have went on Jimmy Fallon and just blew the whole thing, man.
And blew his whole load on there, yeah.
What were you going to say, Matt?
Did we lose Matt?
Matt, we're losing you a little bit, bud. Did we lose him?
I I guess so. There you go. We'll get him back in a minute.
Yeah,
we're talking about like fan movies. I like to call those fan jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good fan job. I enjoy a good fan job.
Yeah, me too, man.
An old fashioned, if you would.
Was that Matt trying to creep back in?
I'm trying to. Something's not working.
There we go. There's your beautiful voice.
You sound even better than ever, Matt.
like a fresh faced 34-year-old.
Like I was just brought back from a snap.
Refreshed from a nap.
So what were you going to say, Matt?
I have no idea what I was going to say.
Yeah, I lost all train.
It was
lost my concentration too. You really threw me off, Matt.
Just fall apart.
Sorry.
Collapsing.
No. So I think what we were just stating at the very end was just what a great job they did. That Tom Holland cannot be trusted with any kind of information and spoilers. They kept it all under wraps.
Oh, that's weird. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, which was very impressive as a whole. Dan, did you know that Captain Marvel was actually filmed after Endgame? So she actually filmed Endgame before she even did her own solo movie.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I knew that they had filmed a couple of scenes, like her first few scenes in the movie where they did the same thing to her too. She walked in and said some lines, and she didn't even know who Nick Fury was or anything like that. Like it was they just kind of cold threw her into that. And I guess maybe in another attempt at secrecy, I'm not really sure. Obviously, it worked.
Yeah, it worked. All right, well, that's kind of just the end of just us talking about Endgame. A lot of fun doing that. Last but not least, and we don't have to go too far into it, but trailer 2 for Spider-Man just got released yesterday.
Oh, made me so aroused.
Oh, man. And I told Matt earlier today. Yeah, I went from 6 to midnight pretty quick, and I watched this trailer at least 20 times. Wow. I think there's so many cool just little scenes without giving anything away, which Marvel's now been doing a great job about, because I hate more than anything them giving away too much of the plot. Yeah. But they did such a great job with this trailer. But there's a lot to go over. The biggest thing for me is they finally mentioned a multiverse. Now, this could be leading into kind of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where we saw Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy and a bunch of other, Spider-Man noir. And we can kind of see them starting to now branch into this. And this could be an opportunity to bring in Fantastic Four. This could be the X-Men. This could be a lot of different ways to now bring in the other universes now that, Disney acquired Fox. So that part's cool, but there's a lot of stuff on social media right now that's just saying that's complete bogus. That's just a way for Jake Gyllenhaal's character of Mysterio just to kind of be like, oh, I came from somewhere else. I'm some mystical beast and hero in another land, because that's how he wants to be portrayed as the new big hero.
Isn't that Mysterio's calling card, right? He's a con man. He's a liar.
Yeah, I mean, I believe, and Matt,
so that would make sense.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier. I think Mysterio in the comic book, he works on movie sets, right? He's a stunt guy.
Mm-hmm.
He has zero superpowers, right? Pretty much, he's just a smart dude.
Yeah, he's an illusionist, is what it is.
Well, we just saw Disney Marvel do this with switching the bad guys and the good guys with Captain Marvel. So I wouldn't be terribly shocked if they do go with the multiverse. Just like you said, to bring in a lot of characters and to explain where all these characters came from or where they've been the whole time. Or I could see it just being a con man. I don't know, because they make Mysterio look super powerful in those trailers.
Yeah, they do.
They do, and I'm very intrigued to see how they are having him fly. Is it just really fancy tech? I mean, we know that tech is out there. So there's no reason that tech for flying, he couldn't make it look a certain way, just like Iron Man does. But it looks pretty real to me. So we're going to see if they maybe put a spin on Mysterio and give him powers maybe, and it's just a little different than what we're used to. I hope they don't do that. But yeah, it looks like he's pretty a powerful dude. And And it's going to be interesting to
interesting that Marvel drops that in the second trailer too. I mean, that's a pretty big drop in that trailer, along with the whole MJ possibly figuring out that he's actually Spider-Man. And I know this might be a misdirection, I think, though, too. I think she might just be busting his balls. But, I mean, it's pretty big to drop in a trailer, the second one. When's the movie come out? In July?
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable because MJ does know who Spider-Man is. Like, they're dating. In the comic books, she knows it's Peter Parker. It's not like it's a secret for her.
Yeah, I'm saying that's a reveal for a trailer. That's a pretty big.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and Matt, July 2nd is when the movie comes out. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
So it's pretty sweet that we get another movie right after Endgame, just a few months after the release, which is.
Well, they're
awesome.
doing three a year, right? So this Spider-Man would be the third this year.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. So I mean, again, from where I can see this story plot going, is it's going to be very much, Peter getting back from Endgame now that people have seen, now that people have seen Endgame and know that Iron Man is no longer around. They show a lot of his pictures kind of graffitied and painted on the walls, and you see Peter Parker obviously reacting to that and being still upset. He's still wearing the Iron Spider-Man suit in the beginning of the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then ditches it halfway through the trailer, which I don't like. That seems like a pretty cool suit. You might want to keep around.
And nanotech.
Well, they did in the first trailer they dropped. He didn't want to take his suit, and it was Aunt May that slipped his suit into his bag. So I bet the whole thing is just, I didn't mean to do this, but gotcha, it was in there already.
But wouldn't it be a lot easier to pack the nano suit?
That's what I was just saying.
Well, depending, I mean, you're going to get screened by TSA. I don't know.
But you could also argue that maybe he rejects the suit to a point too. Maybe it reminds him too much of his hero, and he no longer wants it and kind of wants to get away from it for a while. Who knows?
It's an interesting concept. Well, I said that I was reading. There's some things going around online that people are making comments that Tony Stark was clearly pushing Peter Parker to become another Iron Man. Like if like watching through the progression of the movie, even taking him on as like a father figure type, like he felt fatherly responsible for him. I mean, what other characters did he make an Iron Man suit for?
Yeah,
none.
right.
None. Like, why not make one for Captain America now that you're buddies again? And like, how awesome would that have been having a super powered individual inside a super suit on top of that?
Yeah, and you hear Happy Hogan in the trailer saying to Peter Parker as a reassuring moment, we're saying, you had have to think that Tony knew that you were going to be the guy who was going to be here after he was gone.
And they addressed that though, that like who's going to be the new Iron Man. And so I think, I think he's going to reject it because in the comics, there are other, I think, there's a girl from MIT, she's black, that he ends up
in the comic?
willing his stuff over to.
Remember.
Yeah, that I'm not as familiar as I wish I was, but I will have to look into it. But it's going to be very interesting.
He can't be Iron Man forever, and so he finds somebody who's intelligent, and like I said, it's kind of as smart as he is type deal, and passes on the keys to his kingdom, so to speak.
Yeah, and we'll see if they decide to actually go a different route with that too, and making Morgan Stark the new Iron Man going forward in kind of the new generation, his daughter. They actually casted somebody within this movie that actually did a lot of scenes who was supposed to play older Morgan Stark.
The girl from 13 Things.
Correct, and she was going to be in the Soul Stone just like when Thanos saw young Gamora, it was going to be old Morgan talking to him in that world, and that was actually just released and confirmed, I believe today or yesterday. The Russo brothers, confirmed that because I was wondering who that was since we didn't actually see her at all. But you can also say that kid that you saw in Iron Man 3 who made another appearance at the funeral, he was also an engineer who helped Iron Man get up and running again. You can say that he could be now coming into that new Avengers as well, and he can have a role.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking.
What'd you say?
I mean,
we'll have to wait for the director's cut, see if any of these other shot scenes come out.
But, why put him in that goodbye scene? Like he was a write-off character that played, 15 minutes in Iron Man 3. So it has to mean something.
I think it has to mean something, but I also think it was just symbolism for kind of like a full, like putting somebody through one of, all of his movies, like a full circle kind of thing. I mean, I could be wrong with that. I would like to see them use that character. I mean, they used literally the same actor, and this is now years later. So
right. Exactly.
So hopefully that maybe means something going forward. Who knows? But anyway, back into Spider-Man. Just to kind of read the description of it, because this is interesting. It says, Peter Parker and his friends go on a European vacation where Peter finds himself agreeing to help Nick Fury uncover the mystery of several elemental creature attacks, creating havoc across the continent. So the creatures that we're seeing, we see water, we see earth, and we see fire, which would be the elementals, which is also, straight out of the comic books. Are we thinking that these now characters are truly from a multiverse, or are these now more illusions just straight from Mysterio to just kind of help him with his image and just kind of go along with it to, further his kind of career and imagery as being a hero?
I don't think they look. Illusions. Yeah, I was gonna say they look very powerful. They're definitely destructive. Again, that's why I could believe the multiverse thing.
Now, do you think they're
illusions that are actually wrecking buildings and actually
creating fire?
Okay, maybe not
problems.
Maybe not illusions, but maybe he released them to stop them because he knew a way to do that to still accomplish that image. So they are very much real, but he wanted to be the one to come in and be the big hero of the day.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, anything's possible.
Because no matter what, he's teaming up with Spider-Man. He's shaking hands with him. He's already with Nick Fury. He's going to be the bad guy. It doesn't matter how the movie starts. We already know how this movie will end, and it will be Jake Gyllenhaal being...
Will you put money on?
I would like to pay even money. I mean, I'd bet good money, right? I mean, if he doesn't, yeah, give me some of that Disney money, man. That pyramid scheme money, man.
Give me some of that Mickey Mouse.
All right, so one of my favorite scenes in the whole trailer, though, I gotta say, is when Nick Fury is calling Spider-Man, and Happy Hogan is like, "Hey, you gonna answer that? It's Nick Fury." And he goes, "I don't want to talk to him." And all of a sudden, he holds up his phone and just hangs up, and he's like, "Did you just ghost Nick Fury? You can't ghost Nick Fury." Dude, I love that. And he's like, if you don't talk to him, I gotta talk to him. That was just so funny. When the reason I bring that up is, again, you're seeing a very healthy mixture of drama and comedy, man. Just even in the trailers, you're still seeing that comedy come through, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it is, and that's why I think people of all ages and generations are, enjoying these movies. Like, it's not a comic nerdgasm. Everybody is liking them. Everybody's having fun with them. Everybody's enjoying them, and nobody's getting tired of them, which is really fascinating. You figure after 20 movies, people get superheroed out.
Yeah,
could you imagine if they'd made 20 Lord of the Rings movies?
Oh gosh, so much walking. Just so much walking. That's all that.
So many eagles. Things are going bad. Let's call them eagles.
Even the trees walk in that movie. Oh man.
But there has been that superhero fatigue, which I think is a fascinating phenomenon. Especially considering how fatigued we get of crap as a society very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, they keep saying that like every time one of these big movies comes out, like, oh, we're gonna get superhero fatigue. We're gonna get superhero fatigue. But no, Marvel's done an impressive job of maintaining storyline. That's why I'm interested to see what they do. What is the next saga for them, since the Infinity Stones are theoretically done. And that's what'll be the interesting part. That's why
I think they're not. I think they're not destroyed. I think that's how they're going to get around it. I think Thanos thinks he destroyed them, but you can't destroy the foundation of the universe, right? Like, that's not a thing you could do because you just.
Are they going to be found in the quantum realm? They were reduced to atoms.
Or if they still say things, so yeah. I mean, the multiverse. Are there multiple stones in multiple universes?
Well, there would have to be, right? I mean, they've already proved that, but what I'm saying is, I don't think they're really gone. I think Thanos thinks he destroyed them.
Yeah. Which could be the case. I mean, you have to imagine that he's not the like say all know all, right? He doesn't know everything about the stones.
Right. Well, now I'm trying to remember. I'm in the Infinity Wars timeline comics. I know at points, Nebula controls the Infinity Gauntlet. Tony Stark controls the Infinity Gauntlet. I think doesn't it end up with Doctor Strange? I'm really stretching it here. I'm trying to remember.
There's multiple people, man. I know just Iron Man and Nebula are the only two that
it passes
I'm
through
familiar
quite
with.
a few hands. But is it ever destroyed in the comics? And I cannot, for the life of me, remember.
Yeah, I'd be guessing. I don't want to give false information out there. I'm not too sure about that one.
But I would go by what the Ancient One said. If what she said was true, then destroying the stones would actually destroy time and space itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you couldn't really truly do that. So that we're gonna see a resurgence of. I mean, either that or they've just abandoned the storyline, and this was a convenient plot point for them to do that, right? Like, obviously they could revive Tony Stark anytime they want to, but guess what? Robert Downey Jr. doesn't have any more contracts for movies.
Yeah,
neither does Chris Evans.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting. But to kind of go along with what you were saying, Matt, and the reason why I think Marvel has done such a great job keeping interest within the movies is look at the characters that they've taken out. And it's kind of what I was saying about Iron Man. If you think for 1 second that even Guardians of the Galaxy was a relatable comic book to people who thought they were going to make such a successful, now going to be trilogy coming up, nobody would have thought that in a million years that was going to be the case, 15, 20 years ago.
Such an obscure comic.
I mean, to make a raccoon in a tree as important as they are in this universe and big characters and emotional characters within Rocket, I mean, is very impressive.
Right.
Very, very impressive. Matter of fact, James Gunn, who's now directing the Suicide Squad, who's going to be, redoing the horrible Suicide Squad that was before, he is putting in a bunch of different characters that are not well known. I think one of the villains that's been now casted is a character called the Polka Dot Man. I don't know if you guys have ever even heard of him.
Oh, I see.
I mean, talk about a reach. I mean, this guy's literally dressed in like a white leotard with a bunch of circles on his suit that are different colors. He has like this little shitty eye mask that looks like a Ninja Turtle eye mask, like a little bandana tied around his head. And his power is like creating different like circles and dots, almost like a strange opening of a portal, but they could be like razor blades. They could be like a bunch of different things like inside of those things. I mean, taking characters like that where people maybe had.
Are they going to put the Condiment King into the movie?
I don't know, man. Maybe. No, I know they're bringing back King Shark is another character that they're bringing and putting into this movie. I mean, so they just do a good job because if you just put in what people recognize from their childhood, there's that nostalgia, which is great, but it doesn't capture people because they already kind of know the story arc. And for new characters like this, if they can bring them to life and just kind of give the audience something new and fun and interesting, like obviously that's the way to go, man. That's what people are enjoying, something they don't know anything about that they're now seeing with fresh eyes. So I'm excited for the future. I'm very excited. It's going to be a lot of.
And each one of the Marvel movies, even though they are superhero movies, really do fill a different genre. One of them's a comedy, one of them's an action movie, one of them's a love story, one of them's kind of a detective story. I mean, they all hit different genres. Like, revolve around superheroes, but they're not the same movie. It's not the same formula copied over and over and over.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, and that's just picking up even a comic book and reading those because they all have such dramatic stories, right? I mean,
yeah.
Like you said, there's loss within Spider-Man, within losing his uncle, and then all of a sudden you go into another story arc where all of a sudden, like you said, it's a love story and it's a completely different way of going about it, but still keeping that superhero theme alive, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, if Marvel continue on to print money, they got to continue hitting. So they got a pretty good track record.
Conceptually fascinates me though. It was Disney's decision to do this whole thing, right? Like, to have been a fly on the wall of the original planning meeting for this, like, okay, you guys, we're going to plan this series of movies. It's going to be like 20 movies long. and we're going to start 2000 and what's year to start 2008.
2008. Well, that was Iron Man, but like you stated, I think the Hulk was before then.
And we're going to culminate in 2019, and we've got these movies mapped out, and it's going to cost like billions of dollars to film all of these, and we're going to commit to this investment right now. Like, I mean, where in the history of film has that ever happened?
You know, nothing I can reference, but I can also say I don't know if that's ever going to actually happen again, because I don't think even the new saga going forward is going to be 22 films, 11 years worth of a story. I just don't see that happening ever again.
But think about the commitment to this Disney. I mean, what if Guardians of the Galaxy had flopped?
Man, talk about throwing a wrench in the storyline.
Exactly. And I mean, like
Guardians, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, all the kind of out there ones, the ones that people don't recognize as much. But they went for it, doubled down on it, and did a great job with it. And they took risk not only on plot points, but actors, directors, and it just worked out perfectly for them.
Poor DC.
I mean, it's it could have gone so many different ways, and in fact, it could have gone 14 million ways differently. And only one of them worked out.
I see what you did there.
You just killed Tony Stark.
Just one. And it involves James Gunn. That's the only way this works.
That's the only way it works. All right. Well, what time is it? I'm done. I'm done with this podcast. This.
You know what, you guys?
And if you think I'm going to edit this part out. Hey, an hour and 20 minutes plus. That's pretty decent sized one. But yeah, I'm done. Yeah, and I'm not going to be editing that out. People should know that I'm done. I'm spent after an hour and 20 minutes. That's pretty much my my limit here. Plus, my team lost in the playoffs, so I'm really done. Oh yeah. I can't talk about that though. Let's keep this somewhat positive. But anyway, Dan, thank you so much for joining me, man, and Matt. We really appreciate your point of view and just taking the time to come on the show. And I hope this is not the last time. I hope we have a lot more material.
Sounds great. Yeah, it's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's always fun getting friends together, talking about things we are passionate about. So thank you. And Matt, as always, thank you very much.
Oh, man, every week. Let's do it.
Every week, man. I'm hoping that, like I said, man, I'm really hoping a new Joker trailer drops, because that's the next one I want to break down. I'm very, very excited for that one. I think that's going to be a great movie.
Yeah, what was the other one I wanted to see drop? The Terminator. I want to see that one, too.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. And Dan, if you don't know anything about that, the Terminator movie that's coming out is completely retconning everything that happened after Terminator 2. So this is now picking up exactly after Terminator 2, the one with James Cameron. Mm-hmm. And James Cameron's actually now affiliated with this one as well, going into the kind of Terminator, quote unquote, 3. I guess they showed actual footage of this at CinemaCon in Las Vegas this year, and it went over really well with having a lot of the original characters, with the character who plays Sarah Connor. Arnold, I believe, will be back in this at some capacity. So that should be a good one to...
robots age?
You know, he does state in the movies that he has actual living human tissue. In that retrospect, he will be aged. Yeah, it only makes sense.
Well, we got
saggy robot titties. Man boobs.
He still got it, man. He still got it. Yeah, but it will be good to see Linda Hamilton playing that Sarah Connor role, man. I mean, she was such a badass in the originals, and to see her back, it's gonna be a lot of fun. She's gonna do a good job. But anyway, like I said, I'm done. I'm toast. So again, thank you both for making time tonight, and Matt, we will be doing this again next week.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is WTF, What's the Focus Podcast, Episode 6.
Hi folks, Dirk Bentley here. Being on the go is a big part of my life. I love seeing new places, meeting new people, and performing all over the world. For energy on the go, for me, it's 5-Hour Energy. It works fast, works long, and it tastes good. With 0 sugar and 4 calories. Try it. It could work for your on-the-go life too. 5-Hour Energy. Energy on the go.
Get 5-Hour Energy at your local Sheetz.
With Dunkin' Go-Tos, you can get a great deal on 2 of your favorites, like 2 egg and cheese wraps for $2, 2 bagels with cream cheese spread for $4, and 2 bacon, egg, and cheese croissants for $5. In my opinion, it's a deal that's pretty tough to beat. That's just if you want my go-to cents. If you don't want my go-to cents, it's go too late. Dunkin' Go-Tos, a great deal for $2, $4, or $5. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.